Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Homeopathy Simplified. And today, I'll just quickly introduce myself again. I'm Jonathan Damonte, a homeopath and Bowen therapist, pictured here with my beautiful granddaughter. And I first discovered homeopathy from my father in the 1960s. His name was John Damonte, and he was one of the key teachers during homeopathy's resurgence in Europe in the 60s and 70s. And I was really fortunate to study homeopathy through his students, and I feel a really strong connection to him and his career. I also became a Bowen therapist, it's a neuromuscular therapy, and developed a practice focusing on chronic pain and disease. And after 27 years, I've kind of come full circle, and I want to share my own knowledge. I've made a purpose of teaching a course that is the one I wished I'd had in the very beginning of my career. A course created to make the complex simple and to shine a path through a forest of ideas and misconceptions about homeopathy. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what makes a reliable homeopathic prescription. So in talking about reliability is important because many of us have had, and if you're listening to this show, you probably have had amazing success with homeopathic remedies and also likely had a few failures without taken remedies or given remedies without any effect. And in this talk, I want to talk a little about why that is. So let's look at the dictionary meaning of reliability. There's a very beautiful description. So the quality of being trustworthy or of performing consistently well. The degree to which the result of a measurement, calculation, or specification can be depended on to be accurate. And these absolutely conform to what makes a good homeopathic prescription reliable. The measurement, the arguments of calculation, and specifics of the prescription have to be accurate in a homeopathic prescription. So most homeopathic remedies, as I talked about in the first episode, are often and likely described as treating an illness. So of course we reduce that information and treat illnesses with the namesake of the remedy. So we treat the disease or condition, and thereby frequently we base our prescriptions on what the remedies are known to treat. So if someone has vertigo, I go for the remedies that have vertigo. If someone has diarrhea, we go for the remedies that have diarrhea. And we're going to talk about that today. So not in graphic detail, but in treatment detail. So our topic today is to raise this very important question for all users of homeopathy. And that is, what is the best information to use when choosing a remedy? And how can we make homeopathy more reliable if choosing based on a disease isn't the most reliable method? I'm going to talk about why it's not the most reliable method as well. And I touched on that in the first episode when we talked about the flu with cough and how 3 members of the same family all ended up with different remedies despite having the same illness. So in the beginnings of homeopathy from the late 1700s through the 1900s, really in the circa 1910, there were very few remedies, only a few hundred. Now, 250 years later, there are many thousands to choose between. So the reliability of a well-chosen remedy hasn't changed, but the likelihood for finding one is more challenging as a result of so many choices. And if we look at just the remedies for diarrhea around that time, circa 1910, we see the list contains 48 remedies. And many of these are absolutely well known for diarrhea. And even that is a lot to choose from. How do you distinguish which one to choose if there's 48? Now we jump ahead to, this is just 2012. This is not even 2024. In the same list for diarrhea, we see 947 remedies. These are all remedies known to affect diarrhea symptoms, as of the literature in 2012. Note, there's only enough space to show the A's to L's. From L on, there's no room on the page, and there's no point giving another page to this because it's just a jumble. This is actually only showing about 3/5 of the total. And I'm guessing because L is almost in the middle of the alphabet. But A, B, C is a lot more popular than X, Y, Z. So maybe it's about 3/5. So how, with this massive number of diarrhea remedies, do we choose those that would be reliable for our patient if they have diarrhea? Actually, curiously enough, going back to the one page showing the list of remedies, you can see there's blue is almost bolded, and then there's both italicized and then Roman numerals just written normally. Those denote the different degrees that these remedies are known to treat the symptom. So if we even go back to here, we can see purple bold capitalized is the strongest, then blue bold is the next, and then we have italicized the next grade, and then finally Roman numericals the next grade. So there is a grading to the quality of effect that these remedies would have on the symptoms, but nonetheless, it's too many to choose between. So my point overall is that there's no surprise to anyone that it's hard to choose between so many remedies. Now our question is, how do we fine-tune our choices and make a reliable selection? I'm going to give a case example. So in this slide, there's a beautiful photograph, a daguerreotype of Samuel Hahnemann when he's in his late 80s. And in the beginnings of his homeopathic practice, he only developed about 70 remedies and had tremendous success with treating epidemic illnesses of the time, scarlet fever, cholera, and so on. And he had a world-renowned medical practice and taught many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of students who became practitioners of homeopathy at that time. Now, the current homeopathic pharmacy has jumped from 70 in his time to 4,000 different remedies in the latest literature of 2024. So it just is not that that's wrong. I'm not judging. However, if you want to choose reliably, you need to pool a smaller number of remedies to choose from. So here's a good example case. So this is a man of 72 years old. His chief complaint is 4 weeks of chronic diarrhea, copious, frequent, 3 to 6 times, and he describes it. It's horrendous. It's almost like dysentery or cholera, explosive. He's wasting away. Since 2 years ago, he's had and still has atrial fibrillation, and I've marked in brackets and underlined the character of each of these symptoms because I'll talk about those later. His atrial fibrillation is better when he lies down. It's less intense. He's had vertigo since 3 months, so even prior to the diarrhea, he's worse for any movement. He's now suffering back pain, extreme weariness with groaning, pain-like reaction. It causes him to slouch forward, not even be able to hold himself erect. Also worse for movement. His hip and groin have pain on the right side. He has numbness in his upper limbs, his arms, which is worse when he raises them. So bear in mind, this is just a random selection of many symptoms, but the point isn't to tell you this remedy treats XYZ. It's to tell you that what are we using as information to go and look for this remedy that we'll talk about. So he has body pain, which is from head to toe, and he's constantly rubbing his arms, his thighs, and it feels better. He's got frequent urination. Now, as a 72-year-old man, that's not unusual. And plus, he had a particular regime of drinking a lot of fluids. He was on this master cleanse with, not master cleanse, but the medical medium celery juices. He's on a heavy metal detox. He's on a time tea throughout the day, drinking tons. And, you have to question, how is that affecting him? His heart is racing. I talked about that in the atrial fibrillation. He's got brain fog and weakness. He's got a very unique mental state, and that has changed since he's become ill. When he's in his worst, he's less compassionate with himself. He's frustrated and paranoid even that he's done something wrong and is being punished. He writes goodbye letters as he thinks he will die. It's intense. So an important point I'll make about the above symptoms is that they are all true about his health since becoming ill, and any remedy chosen should match with these symptoms. And that's what we do as homeopaths. We take the puzzle, jigsaw puzzle almost, and match it into the space. So if we choose those symptoms that yield reliable options of remedies, first, we'll be better able to seek between those that are best candidates. So most importantly here, I'm going to show you, I'm not going to tell you why these are reliable symptoms, other than that they're proven through practice to be reliable. The other thing about choosing a symptom is that we mustn't infer a meaning. So, his mental state, is he delusional? Is he fearful? Is he anxious? Is he guilty of a crime? And then his frustration, is he more angry or more irritable? Or is that a expressed way of being sad? We really can't know for sure. And the point I'm making is you can't infer a meaning to a symptom if it's not absolutely 100%. In general, I'm saying that not as a point not to use the mental state, but as a point not to use it to pool a group of remedies that we would choose from. Once we choose the candidates, they also have to have the similar mental state. So another symptom is that is worth talking about. Why, for example, movement was so important, because in the several aspects of his symptomology, he's better lying down, not moving. He has vertigo, is worse for movement. His numbness in his upper arms are worse when he raises them. And so movement is a very, very important element of any remedy that we would choose. So, something more I wanted to add. So, in a general list of what's reliable in this case is very small. We don't need a lot. Even just looking at these, we would come to very limited number of remedies if we choose absolutely true symptoms and they're very simple. And then it gives you a smaller pool of remedies from which to differentiate and choose your candidate. So these characteristics of his symptoms are true expressions of his state in the illnesses that he has. Plus, these were characteristically changed in him after his health worsened. So they're not characteristics of him and his normal state of health. These are characteristics of him since becoming ill. And in homeopathy, we always match the patient's symptoms with the symptoms of a medicine because that medicine can produce similar symptoms. In other words, a reliable medicine must be capable of producing the illness in the similar characteristic expression if it is going to stimulate a healing process. Plus, don't forget the disease symptoms of his diarrhea, atrial fib, frequent urination, weakness, his aches and pains, his mental state. Very importantly, the remedy has to have that as well. So in doing that, I came to a conclusion of prescribing Bryonia alba 30 ch, a single dose. get this in any health food store or pharmacy. It's a very common flu remedy. Yes, it covered the diarrhea, the muscle weakness, the numbness, and very much the state of mind. I found the remedy in such a fast time, I was surprised, and I only chose to use those symptoms that were absolutely true. So doing this is similar to putting together a jigsaw puzzle where most people start with the straight edges, as these are easier to determine and differentiate where they get placed. Now let's find out how Bryonia, pictured here, it's a wild hop and it climbs all over other bushes. And most importantly, the diarrhea stopped in 24 hours. He felt exhausted for 48 hours. And now he has boundless energy. Grateful Bill. That's not his real name, but, it's poetic license. So following a second dose about 10 days later, I received the following message from him. When I got home yesterday and joined my partner for dinner, I found myself saying that I felt great. As those words were uttered, I realized that this is the first time in ages. It's so encouraging that after the second Bryonia, the almost immediate increase in energy and well-being is dramatically more than even after the first one. He's pretty grateful. And, he's 72. He was really fading. I mean, you could see. And he's just revitalized. So, reliability with homeopathy comes from learning what to prescribe. Plain and simple. And I'd like to leave you with a philosophical thought that if we took away what is unreliable, is there enough reliable left? Or is there actually more reliable when you remove the unreliable? I would argue that, but it's a cryptic statement. It just came into me to write that down recently. So if you like the podcast and the video, be sure to subscribe to get notifications. Plus, please join the mailing list at homeopathysimplified.com. And really appreciate any feedback on this. It's fun to put together, and you can tell I'm enjoying it. So take care and speak to you soon.